We now have our business panel, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Greg Muccio from Southwest Airlines Talent Division. We have Mike Zanga, the Chief Information Officer with Deutsche Bank, and Ernie Charles, M&A Integration Executive. What's so good about this particular session here is this is the connection. This is what it's all about as we start to think about the work that you're doing and how it connects back to your schools. So with that, we're going to start with a conversation there, and I'm just going to scoot this chair over. Okay, got that, perfect. And I'm going to start by first asking each of you to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about your background, and then we're also going to open it up to what are some of the questions that you have. And I'm going to start with you, Charles.
Ernie?
Ernie.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ernie Charles. I'm delighted to be here and with you guys. I've been in information technology, IT, for a little over 30 years now. About half my career was with a partner with Ernst & Young in technology consulting. And for the last 15 or so years, I've been a CIO for a couple of different companies in the casino, mainly in the casino gaming business, and for a large Blue Cross system.
Yeah, Greg Muccio. I am Director of Talent Acquisition for Southwest Airlines. So I've been at Southwest for almost 18 years, all in the HR recruiting space, and been associated with this conference for 6-7 years, and so super excited to be here again. I always like to preface that my involvement in this, besides being passionate about it, part of my role, I have a dual selfishness, I guess, in it is I'm responsible, my team's responsible for hiring 6,000 plus folks each and every year, and then I also have a soon-to-be 12-year-old going into the 7th grade, so I see it from two different sides right now.
And Mike.
Michael Zanga. I think I started my career off in education. My first job ever was working for a public school system. I still volunteer lots of my time. I work for a public education foundation in Connecticut. Employment-wise, I've been in financial services for many years. I worked at UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Deutsche Bank for many years. Hiring kids out of college and looking for things that I was needed from a hiring perspective. I got to see it from the inside, being in public school systems, as well as an employer. So thanks for having me, Kelly.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to start with the first question, and we're going to turn this over to the audience as well, so we want to hear questions from you too. But I wanted to start with the first question that talks about how does business define STEM? And I'll start with you, Greg.
Yeah, so I think corporate business, at least. So we saw those great videos from NASA at the beginning, and one of the things that I thought about when I was looking at it is I didn't necessarily resonate so much or gravitate to astronaut or engineer or whatever. As I looked at that, I saw problem solving, innovation, creativity, risk taking, perseverance, and that's really, to me, what defines STEM is creating folks that have those attributes and those kind of desires to be able to have those skills.
Sorry, we were having a little technical difficulty here for a second here. And again, I'll use the Susan thing. I don't have Susan to yell back to say that, so they'll adjust the timer there. I want to switch that over, that same question to you, Ernie, about how do you think businesses define STEM?
I'll speak primarily about my years, many years in the casino business. For us, that was the cornerstone of my talent pool for building my IT teams within the casino environment. And I started out kind of traditionally with software engineers, hardware engineers, computer science graduates, people with backgrounds in program and project management. But then as we got more and more sophisticated over the years in our delivery at our 7 properties across the United States, the last few hires I made were behavioral scientists, a data scientist, a chemist, and a biologist. So they were critical to those, to the capability for us to deliver technology, which is integral to every modern casino. I don't know how many people go, but absolutely critical to building our IT talent.
So, Mike, you have an interesting lens on this because of your role with the Stanford Public Education Foundation, as well as from a business lens. And so your definition of STEM, you're seeing it both from the education side as well as the business side. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you see that synergy between the connection when you're defining STEM?
Yeah, I mean, the previous presentation that we just saw resonates deeply with me. That's what we see in the foundation. We see socioeconomic status really being the driving force to success for a lot of families. And you do have outliners. You have people that are succeeded against the odds, but in general, looking at the averages, that's where it's headed. So then looking at it from an employer standpoint, though, you're basically excluding a large portion of the population because the internship programs are looking at the kids who are the top of their class because they can, right? So they're hiring only a few number of kids each year, so they're hiring the tops of their class. And then you're basically back to the lack of diversity issue again because you just saw that the socioeconomic status means that you're always picking from the top right quadrant each time. So the foundation is trying to move people around that X and Y axis to get people to have opportunities that they may not have before. And it could be as simple as proper foundations of how they get to school. It could be from a number of different lenses. Then from an employer perspective, we're seeing, at least in some of my experience working at the Royal Bank of Scotland, where we're hiring a lot of junior talent in Utah to stand up an operations center. Again, we were finding everyone was pretty much from the same area, the same type of education, same schools, and then the education they were getting was lacking. So then our firm was then spending a good portion of a year training them on what it is that the bank does and the type of skills and technologies that we're looking to hire, and then basically putting them into a 6-month program about the bank and another few months of technology, which meant that we hired somebody. We didn't really get anything out of them as part of the team dynamic for 10 months to a year. And then if someone left, you go back into that pipeline again, and it's a sort of a vicious cycle. So the foundation is trying to break that from a socioeconomic perspective, and I think the firms need to also partner with schools to basically break that cycle as well.
So, Greg, I want to get to, you hire, as you mentioned, over 6,000 employees a year. And I think one of the questions that comes up quite frequently in conversations with business is about this whole reskilling. That if we're creating this pipeline of students and the K-12 system is actually not producing what is needed, and then you talk about those kids that go on 2 paths. One path is college, one path is directly to career. And oftentimes what we hear is there has to be this reskilling process, and if they're going on to the colleges, there is a lot of remediation, there's a lot of issues going on there. And so the question that I have just from your lens, do you have training that you do? Are you seeing that the workforce that you're hiring, one, are you able to hire that workforce? And two, do they have the skills that you feel are necessary? Do you have a training program, or is there additional work that you have to do with new employees as they come on board?
Well, Kelly, I brought a list of some of my open positions. I want to place an order for them to know. So I hire a range. So I have certainly, we have a lot of roles, obviously, within airline that are fantastic for an individual just out of high school and a great career opportunity. And there are so many things that they can do. So it's a really great fit there, all the way to highly skilled positions. I think, the ones that to me would fit in, when I look at some of when I see a divide, especially between our college interns, let's just say, that are smart and even in a STEM-related field, and ones that succeed, ones that we want to offer jobs to, and ones that we don't, it honestly has nothing to do with the education level piece of it. It is the things that we've heard about all the conference, the ability to be self-sufficient and the ability to take initiative and those kinds of things. And that's where I think the challenge is whether it was natural upbringing or most likely teacher influence of that taught them, gave them the tools necessarily, but didn't teach to a test or make them robotic in nature, where if you don't tell them what to do, you can't do it. And it's just like, man, I can't afford to have like 10 different people that I'm telling you how to go do something. I need to be able to say, we need this done, and you go figure it out. And I think the challenge is I have all these different jobs, data science. I've got a ton from marketing. Some of them that my folks sent, I don't even know what that job is. Like, I'm not seriously. I was looking at it, and but this sheet of paper represents probably 250 jobs, all of them that I would easily consider STEM. They did not exist at Southwest Airlines 3 years ago, and probably in general 4 or 5 years ago. And so I think that's one of the big challenges, is that to be able to create the workforce that I need tomorrow and the year after that, when I don't even know essentially what I need, but I do know in common all those things that I mentioned earlier. I need folks that can persevere. I need people that can figure stuff out. So I think that's one of the big challenges.
That's great. And Ernie and Mike, you come from this technology background, and I think it's something that when we look at schools, oftentimes the T in STEM is viewed as Chromebooks or MacBooks, and it's really challenging because as educators, oftentimes you're not trained in the coding, and you have standards, and you have all this other information that you're forced to do that the technology kind of gets put aside. But the technology is extremely important. And I think one of the questions that I have for both of you is to talk about, one, how do you think about, and I'm going to start with you, Mike, how do you think about that connection from the classroom, the K-12 system, and piquing the interest in technology beyond just a computer, beyond just that laptop or Chromebook or whatever we want to call it there, and starting to get them engaged so that we actually can start to have more computer scientists and have a deeper understanding of what is a CIO, what is a CTO? And that's not just someone that comes and fixes your computer, by the way. I mean, there's a much broader picture out there. So I'd love to start with you to kind of help draw more of that connections, and then turn it over to you, Ernie, to really talk more about that global world and the relevance of, the backings of what the CIO is doing.
Yeah, I mean, everything you mentioned is just the tools that people are using. It's a MacBook, it's a Surface Book, it's Linux, it's Windows. Those tools are constantly evolving, and every 18 months they change. And it's about the critical thinking that the people have that you're hiring, that understand the business processes or have an understanding about the business processes and leveraging the tools that they have. So it might be Python this year, it might be a different language another year, but they're delving into the business processes and then going into their, I call it the toolbox of things to basically put it all together. So there's robotic process automation that is agnostic of the tools that you might be using, and that will continue to evolve, and the RPA, the robotic process automation, will have to evolve as well. And it's not about the language and elegantly coding things, because it's about the output and the business process more than anything else. So, what a CIO is not a guy that's coding anymore, and he's not installing anything. At some point in my career, somebody came in and tapped me on the shoulder and said, today's the day you're going to lose your root access, and you no longer can muck around anything. But that didn't mean I wasn't in value. It wasn't value. It had still value because I understood the business process and what changes need to be made. And that's, I think, what we're asking for the next generation. So the tools are irrelevant.
That's great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I'm a software engineer by education, and it would be scary to put my hands back on the keyboard again to do that. But for me in particular as a CIO, it's less about the particular technology, whether it be a laptop, software package, or whatever else, because as we're all talking about, those change every day. I've been in the IT business for 30 years, and I get dumber every day. And so it's a massive challenge just to keep up. So I'm looking for attitude, aptitude, a good basic STEM foundation, and then a passion for creativity and innovation, because the technologies by definition are going to change. And my role as a CIO is to enable those technologies to drive business outcomes. Profitability, new customers, increases in sales, reduction in operating expenses. As a CIO, that's what I've got to do every single day.
So another question that comes to mind, and I want individuals in the room to start thinking of some of your questions, but you know, we look at this panel here, and we don't have a lot of diversity. And I think it's something that corporate America suffers with. I was in corporate America for 25 years, and we do suffer with diversity. And it goes back to trying to find that skilled workforce. And so, Ernie, I'm going to start with you on this, because your 30 years experience, and especially in technology, what do you think companies are doing, and how are we starting to address this diversity pipeline? And what else could we be doing to increase this so that we have a more diverse workforce that really reflects the country?
Sure. Well, as you and I talked, I mean, one of the things that I'm quite proud of that we did at my casino company, and we operated in 7 states, is we formed formal internship programs with the major universities in each of the states that we operated in. And they were a continuing source. I would get 2 to 4 interns every year. And working with HR and the recruiters, we specifically sought, you know, a diverse, you know, recruiting team out of those interns to expose them to the wonderful world of casino gaming and some of the opportunities that they could have there. But we specifically recruited them, not just based on campus recruiting, but in our internship program, and also using that opportunity to provide some additional insight into those universities about maybe some suggested curriculums and skills and capabilities that they could augment that would increase that.
Great. I'm going to go to Mike, and then Greg, I'll have you.
Yeah, I feel pretty passionate about this because I've worked in global organizations, and I've been on management teams, and you look around the table, and it's like everyone is between 35 and 45, all white males in technology, and then you ask them to go and do diversity. Yeah, I mean, diversity to them means, oh, they're going to hire an older guy or a younger guy. It doesn't really resonate. And I was successful at kind of breaking this by going again into the schools and talking to the kids about it. And you have a career fair, and you have a desk there, and there's just a line of guys, and they all wear hoodies, and they all have their PlayStation, and the girls are like, I'm not going over there. And you almost have to go out of your way to go after either the girls or people from other races, creed, countries, etc., and ask them, well, why are you not talking to us? What are you interested in? And you'll get, yeah, I'm interested, but I just didn't want to be part of that crowd. And I think there's a bit of stereotype that goes in saying, well, that's not the job that I'm interested in. But again, back to my other comment before about the tools, you could say to them, it's not about what laptop you're going to use or what language he knows. It's about using the tool set and all the diversity that you have to solve that problem. So if you have 5 guys in a room asking to solve some problem, they're all pretty much going to come up with the same answer. Until you inject diversity, all the answers to the problems are always going to be the same. So it's bigger than just technology as well.
Great, Greg.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things, the biggest impact or biggest challenge on it is that you heard them. It's an opportunity gap or really an exposure gap, right? And so I'll use an example. I was mentioning my daughter. My daughter Oh, congratulations, that's working. We've all been trying long and hard on that, so I love to hear success. And she gets to go to, you know, a couple times a year, I'll take her to work or whatever, and she gets to see and expose that. But there's so many others that don't, and so I think that's one of the key components really on the business side and in partnering with education is you've got to, if they can't see anything besides what's in their little area, then that's as big as their dream is for the most of them's going to be, you know, unless they're that outlier. So I think that's really huge. And then, you know, proud to, we've had a great, very robust college program where we've averaged, you know, easily, you know, 250 to 300 plus college students a year. The diversity in our college internship program is better than our overall diversity numbers. And then we've started a high school one as well, and we've got approximately 45 high school interns at 10 different locations, and we have like 53, 57% diversity in that, and a third of them are females. And then to your point with the recruiting piece of it, we now use our college interns, former college interns that either get hired or ones that go back to help recruit for us. So once again, there is that, they're seeing, it's somebody that looks like them is talking to them, which then helps to build that versus you're sending, you know, middle-aged, you know, white guys to go man a booth on campus, you know, or whatever, so.
One thing you said yesterday, Greg, that resonated with me was when we were talking about, you know, Southwest Airlines and how many children have never had the opportunity. Sure, they see a plane in the sky, but they don't even know what's really going on in the plane in the sky, right? And so oftentimes when you think of a job, you might say a pilot or a flight attendant, but a lot of these children don't even know what that is, right? And so I'd like you just to talk a little bit more about the outreach and the connection and ways to address some of those issues there.
Yeah, so when we, as I said, selfishly, you know, we had these hiring goals and knew that wasn't going to stop. And so one of the things, you know, we joke about it all the time, that I could go to almost any school if it's you know, economically disadvantaged, like you said, they may not even know who we are. And we actually had that. We went to a economically disadvantaged elementary school that was literally with like 3 minutes from our headquarters and our Love Airport, and it's just like, okay, that thing that makes a noise like probably every 15 minutes over your school, I'm like, that's us or whatever, but they didn't know because most of them haven't flown. And then, like I said, if they do think of aviation careers, it's just those two. And so we've just put a lot of effort and energy in creating awareness. We do something for our internal employees that we hope to continue to expand, but it's literally a 4-day summer camp where we expose them to the world of work at Southwest Airlines, and it's just hands-on, but they get to see that. And we do that because the employees, kids, they love Southwest, but they only know what their mom or dad does, and so we wanted to do that. But then we expanded, okay, how do we reach others? And so we do what we call an aviation day, and that's for 3rd through 8th graders, where it's just kind of, you know, that kind of sampling piece that we're going to do, and we hope to continue to grow that in the high school internships. And we're just working more and more to try and just make them aware of just all the different types of opportunities. And one of the things that I'm proud of it with Southwest and what we're is it is a great career opportunity, and what I love about and I've challenged teachers before, I mean, the stability and the benefits that we have. You know, I can hire somebody as you know, on the ramp or a mechanic or whatever, and in a very short amount of time, they will out-earn several of their friends that might have gone to college and maybe didn't make it all the way through or struggled or racked up debt. And what's great is we have tuition reimbursement. So that student that's not quite ready yet, now they're getting those kind of things and really being able to move the needle. And then we do have a lot of internal programs, whether it's training, leadership, other pathways and pipelines. I'm working on a pretty big project right now to really have a really strong internal mobility program that will use to help, you know, move folks around the company. So it's real important to us.
That's great. I'm going to ask Joan and Wendy if you could get mics, just so if we could get some microphones so we could ask the audience if there's some questions there. Oh, we have one in the back here. Are there any questions right now? Oh, we have one we have one here and we have one here. Great.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
I had to rewrite my question like 5 times. You kept asking. I think we're on the same wavelength here.
All right. Thank you, Erin.
But you were talking a little bit about like marketing and reaching out to schools, which was wonderful on career days. And you said that, you know, you see the line of guys with hoodies. And I wondered if you had been maybe speaking the language of some of the other cultures, like as women in STEM, like there are certain things I look for in companies, and there's flexibility is one of them. Maybe speaking some of the language of different cultures might pull in some of that diversity that you're looking for. So I'm wondering if you are speaking any of those languages or exploring some of those cultures and bringing that into your marketing.
I think that might have been to me. Yes, over time, we had people in the recruiting drives that were diverse, that were then targeting the groups of people we were looking for. So I think in the inception, no, but over time, it got better and better. So we have the same success rate. We had the internship and the junior population was more diverse than the rest of the organization. And hopefully over time, that transition will continue to go all the way up through the ranks of the firm. So initially not, but yes, we did do that, and we had lots of success with it.
Ernie or Greg, do you have any comments in terms of you know, some of the diversity programs? I know, especially when I was in corporate America, we had affinity networks, for example. So we had a women's network, and so there were a lot of ways to help build women's professions, and so you had more senior level women that were really helping to develop and advance younger women. We had the African American Forum, we had the Asia Pacific Forum, so we had different groups that were there and a part of that. Is there anything else that you had in terms of some of those different groups that you've seen, or?
Very similar things, and by definition, we were always trying to expand the diversity within the management ranks within IT and every other operating piece, but by definition, a casino is a very diverse customer environment.
Yeah.
So we had, Asian-themed casinos. We had all of the various setups for different types of our cultural customers. And we started leveraging some of that for additional outreach as well.
No, that's great.
Yeah, similar, and one of the things that we're trying to do as well is for our online presence as well, career site and that, to have that much, to be transparent and to show that as well, right? Because we can't be everywhere, we're not doing all these events, and so what I want is an individual that, you know, has access 24/7, 365, can get on our career site, and once again, I want them to see someone that has a lot of similarities into what they have as well.
That's great. I think we have another question in the middle. Oh, okay, then Kate.
I'm curious how you guys actually assess these 21st century skills we keep talking about when you're looking at hiring, because we talk about how a lot of teachers are stuck teaching to the test and how a lot of these skills aren't on standardized tests. So how do you guys assess when you're looking for 21st century skills?
Oh, well, we're a pretty heavy behavioral-based interview company. We were really founded, and it carries through today, but where we hire for attitude and train for skill. Now, we can't do that, and there's obviously some STEM roles that aren't there, but that is so critical to us, and I will literally, I have 115 people in my org, and 70 to 80 of them are recruiters, and I tell them this, every other month. I will support you 100% of the time if you want to present a candidate that doesn't fully meet this job description and every little tick and tie thing on there that a hiring manager, if you think that it meets it, I'll never support you if they're not being a good cultural fit and some of those essential skills that we talk about. So we're just really kind of keenly focused on it. And then part of the effort too really is to begin with some of our hiring leaders to push them more towards, what do you want this, what does good look like if this person comes in and 6 months on the job and those outcomes, and let's focus on somebody that can do that and not necessarily this laundry list of things where you've asked for things that now there's 4 people in the United States that can do that job or whatever, right? So it works kind of both ways. We're having to do it internally, but that's how we look at it externally. So.
Great. Any other comments that you would add, Ernie, or any
Yeah,
comments?
I mean,
No, go ahead.
in some of my teams, I can't say the firm was doing this, but we discussed a problem in the interview rather than, oh, here's the 10 things I want you to have. You need to have Python, and you just go down the list of things, because we would find the kids that we were looking for didn't have those skills. So if we say, I want to make this box blink purple, how would you go about doing that? And then you throw a problem. Oh, but if you don't have that available to you, what would you do? That gets that critical thinking thing to get bubble out of the candidate. And to your point, you're just looking for people that have the skills, and then you can train them with the things that they're missing. But if they're more of a culture fit and they are, looking at things the right way, that's a better hire than looking for someone who ticks the 10 things on the box, because you're not going to find them most
Right.
likely.
And I was going to say.
Well, we did something because as Greg knows, we borrowed quite heavily from Southwest Airlines when we were establishing our casinos and our human resources procedures, hiring practices, so forth. We used and leveraged Southwest as a global best practice and mimicked a lot of those things. So we did behavioral interviews, problem-solving interviews, and then we also would, and it would ebb and flow, but we'd use a variety of diagnostic tools, Myers-Briggs, Workplace 5, a variety of those, because we had defined out over a period of time for different positions within the casino, there was a capability we were looking for. So if you've got the base educational skills, that's great. But then do you have the customer service skills, those creative skills, and those innovation that we can help drive out and even further?
And one that we love to ask that I've heard a lot, and I would be so excited because I've heard a lot of teachers, a lot of the folks on the stuff that I've listened to and at lunches talking about the opportunity or the ability to fail. And it's, we used to have stuff like sometimes it's like, hey, when was the last time you made a mistake? And if it was too long, it's like, well, you're not trying hard enough then because you're not doing stuff. And one of my favorite interview questions is, hey, tell me the biggest mistake you've ever made. And then what did you do? What did you learn from, or whatever? Because everyone that I hire is going to make mistakes, and probably a lot of them. I'm not worried about hiring that perfect person, but I want to see someone that's got the humility to talk through that, and then to talk about, here's what I learned from it. The next time this happened, here's what I did different. And that's huge, 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 huge.
Yeah, great. All right. Oh, no, they'll turn it on, Wendy.
So, Kelly, I have just a little follow-up to that. So, Greg, and all three of you, I'm loving what you're saying about the skills and having children that are looking for jobs, one that just got one and one that will. So, does the job advertisement emphasize the skills? Because if you have whatever the title is, data analyzer, whatever, kids won't apply. But if you describe the position from a skill-based perspective, then they might. So I'm curious if HR is in tune with what you're saying.
Yeah, well, luckily I am HR, so I'm
right, I forgot.
I'm eating my own dog food, as they say. Some of our job descriptions are as horrific as they come, and I look at it, it's like, well, if I was fishing and this was the bait, I'm not catching anything with this, right? And so we actually have been having a lot of fun with our recruiters. I'm shameless, but it's like I call them, job description clickbait, really is what it is. But we're having fun job hooks or whatever, where it is more appealing to their personality and what they do, because first of all, it's like, I don't even know what that means. It doesn't describe what they're gonna do on a day in or day out basis. There's 10 different variations of that. And so, I think that's a huge thing. I think that's in HR circles, and that's catching some momentum. The problem is, or the challenge is, like, I'm ready full for, like, hey, I just want to write a really cool paragraph and be done with it. and then, legal gets involved, and it's like,
Oh,
well, you
yeah.
got to have all this stuff. I'm like, well, do I have to have it all there? As long as it's somewhere in there, is that, okay? But yeah, I think progressive companies that are going to attract the best talent are going to have, if they don't do that, then they're going to lose out. So it will become a necessity, in my opinion, sooner than later.
Great. All right, Kate.
Yes. So thanks, everybody. I had a question that's related to the presentation we just heard from, which was a proposition that we need to completely rethink and redesign the educational system. So I'm with BNY Mellon, so a Fortune 500 company. We also are always contending with our pipeline issues. Curious to hear your thoughts on, do we need to redesign the system, or should we continue to tweak it? If we do need to redesign it, is there a role for business, and what might that look like?
It's a great question. Who would like
Yes.
to start?
And I'm done. No. Yeah, so honestly, I think the challenge is I look at this chair, right? There's 4 legs on it, and I think that there's 4 legs in making this. Obviously, there's the educational piece of it, the teachers and those sort. I think there's the policy makers. I think there's parents and community, and I think there's business, and there's an equal lift from all of it. And if this chair only had 3 of the legs on it and I'm the student, I'm gonna fall or I'm gonna fail. And I think that's where it needs to be able to have, have that ability. I think the previous presentation was great. I think the one thing that I would probably different is I think if business can get involved, they have maybe a better opportunity to influence policymakers than just education by themselves. I think if we went in together, if corporate and business went in and said, hey, we're trying to make the country great and do these things, this is what we need, this is our workforce development group across all these groups, here's what you need to do to support and help them, I think that's a different story to me, or a potentially different, better outcome.
It's great.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of jobs are going offshore because of the lack of local talent in some cases, and that's where business has to basically start raising their hand and bang the table, saying, the reason why we're doing this is not just economics of cheaper labor rates. It's the actual skills we can't find, and that is only coming from our local educational system. So to use that as the hammer, business has to drive more. If the ultimate goal is to get jobs and enhance people's lives, then how can we not be involved? And it starts at local jurisdictions and within states, and it's national, and then these big global companies. That's where the difference will come into place. Because if the root of their last presentation was just fundamental family and social economic status, how can the employers not be involved in fixing that? My opinion.
Mike?
Yeah, no, I would agree, and we certainly tried to lend our voice to that, particularly with giving pretty direct and blunt input to the colleges that we worked with in our internship program, to get them to add things like design thinking, critical thinking, innovation skills, and so forth, because, as I said, that was a cornerstone for anybody that was going to work in my business, is a deep passion for problem solving on a daily basis. So to add those things to their technical skill set that they've got, because what I was trying to overcome, I couldn't outsource anything in the casino business because it's a physical property that I got to bring customers to. So outsourcing is not an option. I've got to do it with local talent, and I want to do that with local talent. But I got tired of what I call the reskilling costs, because I bring people in with great degrees, great backgrounds, and so forth. That's the reason our job descriptions were probably about 7 pages long, because we had a deep descriptions in there of what it was going to take to be successful and for you to have fun. We didn't have employees, they were all called teammates. We didn't have a single employee in the company. But we tried to influence that as much as we could with the educators and the colleges and universities that we worked with.
And the part that I would just add, and so I know I'm moderating, but I'm going to give my 2 cents on this anyways, is the fact that, educators are working as hard as they can. And you can't say that they're not doing a good job or they're not doing what they're supposed to, because they're dictated by policy. And so when we say we need to think about, kind of redesigning education, I think what we need to think about is how do we kind of re-engineer education? It's not necessarily this whole, we're gonna start from scratch sort of thing, but I think what we have to do is to look at the policy level. Because we have standards, and the question came up yesterday about, when you have all of these standards and you have these pacing guides and you have to do this on such and such a day or at such and such a time, it's a lot of pressure. And so how do we start to alleviate some of those pressure points? And I think the key to that is when you start to build collaboration. When you start to have these conversations where policymakers are not making decisions just based on political gains, but they're starting to make decisions because you're hearing from what's happening on the ground and you're hearing what are the needs that businesses have, that's the beauty of the connection. And I think that's what we have in here, and what we're trying to do is to change that. And I think even with Kelvin, who'll be joining us, is going to talk about that it's no longer about being in these separate silos here, but we need to bring learning where kids aren't going from one subject to the next subject, which is all about integrated STEM, and it's really integrated education, but thinking of it in those silos and saying, I don't know why this is relevant or what I'm doing, but instead starting to say, I get it. What I'm doing in math applies to my science. I'm learning about the history of it. I'm applying it to the English part of it. And now I'm looking at my community and saying, wow, these are some of the problems going on and I can solve them. So I think that's the difference, is that it's not a major blow up of the system. I think it's about taking all of this amazing talent that we currently have and helping to equip them with the tools and resources and getting the policymakers to stop making those decisions just at that high level without really knowing what's going on the ground. So that was my 2 cents there. Other questions or comments? Oh, over here. Yep, see, this was the person who hadn't made the comment yesterday, so great.
So there was a really interesting piece of research in 2014. I think the researchers were Sullivan and Leong, I'm gonna say, but I'm getting old. My memory's not what it used to be. And what they did was they looked at recruiting fairs, recruiting materials, and they worked with recruiters. And they had 2 scenarios. And in one scenario, they would say, our industry dominates the field. We want to be the first. We are competitive. We are whatever. And they would get predominantly applications from men, or from male students, college students even. And when the recruiting information had pictures of people, had said, we're about customer service, we want to serve our clientele, we want to take care of them, the applicants were predominantly female, which I find fascinating. You know, like they've kind of stereotyped these 2 sets of characteristics as male and female. And I'm wondering, to what extent does it influence what you do, and to what extent should it influence what we do with kids?
Thank you. That's a great closing question there, and I'd love to, I think we'll start with Ernie on this.
I think part of what we have to do is, and I can't say that we practiced it fluently, but is to appeal to those and make sure that we understood, who we were trying to recruit and the types of skills and abilities that we were looking for, and to match up to our client base, because everything that we did, even in pure engineering and IT jobs, customer service was the focal point. That's the reason if you read the job descriptions, even if you're going to be one of my network design engineers, you are responsible for ensuring a enviable customer experience in everything that you do. And so that was embedded in our interviewing process, our selection process, because that was the cornerstone of what we did, and that was our brand, was the premier gaming experience.
Yeah, so Colleen Barrett, who's our president emeritus and helped, founded the company, I mean, with her was there all along. She a long time ago told us, just to help so we could get a really good perspective on stuff, she goes, we're in the customer service business, we just happen to fly planes. And that's just really the perspective inside and out, and I think we've held true to it. I don't know enough about, you know, the advertising piece there, if that's what's drawn, but I think the point is, and even to where you are at the students, and it goes back, I think, to what the previous presenter has said, and we've heard multiple times, one size doesn't fit all. And so I think that is important as teachers to realize that if you have a class of, you know, 25 or 30 students or whatever it is, there's just so much difference in each one of those seats that if you're trying to take, you know, all of them and put them into the same box or whatever, it's going to be a struggle. And I think being able to recognize different people's talents and strengths and bring them together, that's what I do as a leader on my team. Not everyone's like I have a lot of people that disagree with me or are very opposite of me for that, you know, purpose and reason, but putting that together, and I think that's real important. I think that's an important dynamic. You know, if you're doing projects, those sorts of things, make sure people aren't with their buddy or their friend. Make them work with people that are very different with them, because that's what's going to happen to them in college if they pursue it. That's what's going to happen to them in business. You are going to be on projects with people that you do not agree with, would spend one moment outside of work, but your success depends on you being able to work with them.
That's great.
Yeah,
Mike.
I think the only thing I could really add is I think you always need to stop and look at the unconscious bias, right? And always take a view of the data, who's being interviewed, what's the team dynamics, who's succeeding, who's not succeeding. I look at it from a promotion process, and I look every year, it's like, well, why are we always promoting people, the white males in New York, and we never seem to promote anybody in India, or never seem to promote any women in Phoenix? So back to, you know, how do you break that chain? Is you're just constantly always taking a deep breath and a pause and looking at those biases and trying to structure it differently. And I think everyone owns a piece of the puzzle. It can't just be a mandate and then it just happens. It starts at all little pods through the organization up through, and you know, everyone has their little part. Hope that answered the question.
So I want to thank all of you, and I think, you know, the key kind of takeaway on this is that we need to do a better job internally inside of business, kind of advocating for the needs of what educators are looking at. Because what I heard, and I didn't hear this once from any of you, which is often the way that foundations and businesses go, they'll say, if we just make a better curriculum, that's going to fix everything. And all that I heard from the three of you, it's about skills, it's about skills, it's about skills. And it's about taking that content knowledge and what you learn, and that's important, but it's more important the skills that you're learning from that. And so I think it's a really great way to kind of bring this together. So I really want to thank you. And if you have any final comments or anything you felt really passionate that I didn't get across or we didn't get across, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, I just thank everybody in the room and the teachers for the hard work, the job that you do. I think if you take the view of whatever you do for a living as a craft, and you're going to constantly try and make it better, and for you guys to come here on the summer and to do things to become better at your craft, I'm just very grateful for what you do. So thank you.
Events like this will make the difference.
Well, thank you. All right, thank you.